Today on the Lazy RPG Talk Show, we have a really good Pathfinder 2 bundle we're going to take a look at. There is the Stoneshatter Tomb Kickstarter going on right now. I'm going to give more thoughts about my Dragonbane game, some things that I've been learning from my Dragonbane game. There's a really fun article for Daggerheart called A Dishonest Review Full of Lies about Daggerheart. We're going to talk about that article, and I'm going to talk about some of my experiences with Daggerheart as well. I'm going to talk about Discord. There's been some Discord drama going on. Discord is a very common platform for GMs, so we're going to talk about that today. Today's tip is move steps forward. How can you take some of your prep from your last prep session and move it forward into your current prep session? And we're going to cover more questions from the Patreon Q&A, all today on the Lazy RPG Talk Show. I'm Mike Shea, your pal from Sly Flourish, here to talk about all things in tabletop role-playing games. Last week on Sly Flourish, I published the article Greed, Heroism, and Wonder, the 3 primary motivators for characters to go off and do adventures. This article kind of talks about how to use those 3 motivations, how to wire them into quests, how to wire them into the characters when you're doing character creation, and what are some other sort of lower level motivations, some other more specific motivations that might motivate your characters to go on adventures, and why those are all important. That's available on the Sly Flourish website now. It went out to subscribers to the Sly Flourish newsletter, totally free to sign up. And it went out as a Readings and Reflections podcast to fine patrons of Sly Flourish, hero tier patrons of Sly Flourish. Next week's article is, do the 8 steps work for other RPGs? The answer is yes. If you want a short version of the article, one word, yes, they do. However, how do they work? And what are some of the elements that change depending on what kind of RPG you're playing? If we look at the specific 8 steps, how do they vary from system to system? All that kind of talk is in this. That is available, again, on the Sly Flourish website. It will be coming out as a newsletter this week. Please subscribe to the newsletter. Totally free to do it, and you get the article sent right to you. And it will be a Readings and Reflections article, a Readings and Reflections podcast for hero tier patrons of Sly Flourish. Those are the 2 big articles, last week's and next week's Sly Flourish articles. I am continuing to work on my secret project. I think that I'm done with the second draft, and I'm completely up to date with all of the comments that I have received thus far from fine patrons like you, who gave me really good feedback on this new project that I'm working on. This Wednesday, I'm going to be putting out Packet 3. So Packet 3 is the next big chunk. I think it was like 40 pages of stuff. It was a big chunk. It's a big chunk coming out this Wednesday. And I think that leaves only one pack to remain. I feel like it's in a good spot where we're starting to kind of get assets together for the Kickstarter. If you hang out on our Discord server, which you get by becoming a patron of Sly Flourish, and if you're a Hero Tier subscriber, you have access to our Hero Tier channel on the Patreon, where I've been sharing some of the artwork from this project, and people have been very excited about the artwork, so it's very cool. So this is going on right now, and the feedback that I've been getting is really good. I'm pretty happy with it. I always go between like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible, and I'm going to be embarrassed that I've ever made this thing, too. Like, I think it's really good. I think it's really doing what it's doing. And so I feel like it's, I'm happy with it. I'm happy where it's going. I think the feedback is really helping me refine what's going on there. I want it to be a 100-year book, right? I want this to be a thing where somebody 100 years from now who is still involved in tabletop role-playing games can pick this up and be like, yeah, there's good stuff in here. Like, that's my goal. So that is something that I'm working on a lot. I've really been focusing very heavily on that. For a while, I was working on it every single day. And now I'm working on it primarily on Mondays and Fridays, where I'm digging into the details, kind of going over it again. I'm kind of in third draft mode, but pretty soon I'm going to be locking it down and sending it over to Scott Gray, who's going to be editing it. And we're going to start editing it and getting it ready for samples so we can start getting things ready for a Kickstarter, which will probably be happening this summer. So you'll certainly be hearing more about it this summer. There is a lot of different places you can do bundles, but this is a new one for me, which is Fanatical. I have not heard of Fanatical, and I've not used them before. And I have not done this one myself, so I don't know what the delivery of these products are like. And sometimes I have found with these bundles, I found this out recently. There was a bundle for, I think it was Larry Niven. It was an author's bundle for ebooks, and I was like, oh, that's great, and I backed it, and it turned out it was like, here's 27 ebooks, but they're all in EPUB with DRM, and I was like, oh, that sucks, like, I can't believe these all have DRM on them, right? And then you got, it's a big pain in the ass. So I don't know how these are delivered. I know they're not going to have DRM, but sometimes the delivery mechanism for bundles can be kind of a chore. So it's worth considering Maybe you want to do a little bit of research before you jump on board with this one to see how it's good. However, wow, the price is really good. 26 Pathfinder 2 products for $15, right? That's like 50, it's almost 50 cents. It's like 60 cents a product. And the products include all four core books: Player Core, GM Core, Monster Core, and Player Book 2 Core, plus a bunch of adventures, and including the Abomination Vaults. And the Abomination Vaults comes in 2 versions: the original 2nd edition Pathfinder 2 version, and the 5th edition version of Abomination Vaults. So even if you're just looking at Abomination Vaults, I think it's cheaper than if you've got Abomination Vaults by itself. Plus a whole bunch there's a world guide, character guides, ancestry guides, tons of stuff. It's a really, I think I am going to back it, because I think this has a bunch of stuff I don't have. And for $15, I think it's worthwhile. It says DRM free, instant delivery. I don't know what that means, right? And multiple file types. I also don't know what that means. Sometimes the interface is a little kludgy, and for 26 products, it could be a pain in the ass. But yeah, it's hard to beat the price. MSRP is $457, and you're getting it for $15. So who would this be for? If you don't own any Pathfinder 2 products and you're kind of interested to see what it's like, you want to flip through them, take a look at the art, maybe take a look at some of the worlds that they've got, take a look at some of the adventures that they have for the campaigns, it's almost certainly worthwhile. Like 97% off. It's ridiculous, right? So really good deal. That is the Pathfinder 2 RPG bundle on Fanatical. You can find a link to that in the show notes. Really good deal. I'm always on the lookout for good deals. I'm here for you. Right? I'm here to help you find good deals in tabletop role-playing games, and that Pathfinder 2 bundle is a really good deal. Stoneshatter Tomb. I had the opportunity to play this adventure, the Stoneshatter Tomb, by the author who ran it for me, I believe, at Page, and it was a lot of fun. Stoneshatter Tomb is an adventure, a second-level adventure designed for convention play, designed as a one-shot, that is for Shadowdark. So it is a fun Shadowdark adventure. I have a preview of it that I was sent. Here's the preview. So 17-page adventure, very common sort of Shadowdark style layout. And really fun adventure. I enjoyed this adventure a lot. It was fun to play. I played through it as a player, as a character. We had a really good time with it. So if you are looking for an adventure, it has some kind of custom monsters, a couple custom magic items. It's got some rival crawlers, like people who could also be doing it, and a nice Dyson map. The map is what I remembered. I was like, do I remember playing this? I was like, yeah, I did. And this is cool. It got some GM tips and stuff like that in there too. So really cool. The good news is you're seeing it, so we know it exists, right? We don't have to count on, are they going to be able to deliver or not? Good news, yes. The answer is yes, because we have it. Right? I have a copy. So if I have a copy, that means there is a copy, which means you can get it. PDF is $5. So you can pick it up for $5 to get it in PDF. There is a print code. So you can get it at $8, gets you a print version of this shipped in the United States. I believe this is going to be a print-on-demand version that is available. So very reasonably priced. And there are other kind of versions for different platforms, different VTTs, if you play with other VTTs as well. So that's The Curse of Stoneshatter Tomb, a Shadowdark adventure by Jeff Mueller. Really fun, and I wanted to give that a spotlight today. I've been really enjoying my Dragonbane campaign, and I've noticed some things. So one of the things I'm kind of doing here on the show from time to time, as I'm running these new systems to me, like Dragonbane, like Daggerheart, I want to kind of share my evolving experiences with these games. I have the right to change my mind as I go through these experiences. I learn them, but I like to kind of share the experiences that I'm having. And Dragonbane is now my Wednesday game, so I'm playing this every week. We are a bunch of sessions in. I don't think we might be 10 sessions in, so we've done quite a bit. And I'll tell you, my players, if you recall from earlier ones, I was like, yeah, my players aren't digging it quite as much as I am. They're digging it now. And one of the reasons why the character power has gone up quite a bit, and they're happy with the character power. I am, of course, like, is that character power okay, or are things going to work powerful? And I think it's worth understanding like how the power is increased, how they've gotten new capabilities and abilities, and how that affects the balance of the game have been things that I'm learning. So one of the interesting things about my game is because we have 3-hour sessions every week, and you handle the skill progression at the end of every session, it means that they're progressing pretty often. If I could go back, I might say that we would progress every other session instead of every session. right? Because that would cover more about the 4.5, 5 hours at the expected session length, instead of more of like the 2.5 hour sessions that we're taking now. And so what ends up, why does it matter? And it matters because at the end of every session, they get to pick basically 4 or 5 skills that they can attempt to upgrade. And it means the characters are upgrading skills pretty frequently. And now we've got a bunch of characters who have 14s, 15s, 16s in skills. We have one guy who's got an 18 already. One guy hit an 18 on evade. And evade is one of the best skills, right? Particularly if you have the heroic ability that lets you use evade off your turn. Now, the likelihood of him getting hit when he uses evade is 1 in 10 on any monster, right? 1 in 10. So he's very unlikely to get hit by when he uses evade. He can dodge damage way better than armor, right? Way better than anything else. Like his ability to get hit is really, really low. So his ability, the likelihood he's going to get hit has gotten a lot less. Now, there's a nice cap on this, which is you cannot get better than an 18. You cannot increase a skill higher than an 18. There's always a 1 in 10 chance you're going to get hit. That's pretty good. It's also really hard to hit an 18 because you have to both boost that skill and roll an 18, 19, or 20 in order to get it to be an 8, or I guess 17 to 20. Yeah, if it's a 17 and you roll a 17, it will go up to an 18. So you have like a 20% chance every time you mark it that you're going to be able to boost that up to an 18. I think I have that math right. 17, 18, 19, 20. It sounds about right. So it means that the characters have gone up quite a bit in power. And what ends up happening, because I offered up relatively early the heroic ability for them to take evade as a off without having to use their action to do so, it basically turned will into hit points. It meant that a lot of time when they're about to take damage, they make the choice of, am I going to burn my 3 will in order to avoid taking damage? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. If you aren't running them through a series of encounters where they're going to use a lot of will for other things, they're almost always going to be using will to do evades, and then they're going to not take any damage. But because they're burning will, it isn't a zero-sum situation. It isn't a situation where they aren't having any detriment, but it's often way better to take 3 will, to use 3 will, than it is to take 12 or 14 points of damage, right? Because a lot of the characters do not have a lot of hit points. In some cases, 14, 16 points will knock them completely out. So it's kind of interesting, the relationship between will and heroic abilities and the evade skill and hit points and how all of those interrelate is interesting. The threat is still there. They still have dangerous monsters. I talked last week about running them through the man-eating plant, and they're still talking about that and how that man-eating plant kicked the hell out of them. So that really matters. But that has been an interesting thing that I've been studying, is this interaction between will, evade, and hit points, and the heroic ability to use evade off turns. I mentioned that now, one thing is when you have heroic abilities that let you do something more often and your skill is going up, there's like a quadratic value gain from that. That, as an example, one of the players now has the ability to cast 2 spells per turn. There's a heroic ability they just took that lets them get 2 spells per turn. But their ability to cast the spells is also getting better and better, which means the likelihood they're going to fail on those spells is less and less, right? That got really beneficial. There are some other abilities, other heroic abilities, where people are getting things like multiple attacks, even though you're at a Bane on one of the attacks. It almost doesn't matter if you have a Bane in the attack. If you have an 18 in your sword skill, that Bane is not really, it's maybe like a -1, right? The likelihood that you're going to get a Bane on it is, you're already going to hit a lot. So one of the things is when you roll with a Bane, which is the equivalent of like rolling with disadvantage, if you think about it from 5e terms, that your the higher the likelihood of the roll, the less impact it has when you have that disadvantage, right? The odds change. That's one of the interesting things about advantage and disadvantages. They're equivalent of like a +4 or +5 bonus, only if you're like at the 1 to 10 or 11 to 20. But if you're at 18, 19, and 20, then the disadvantage is really only like a -1, right? It really doesn't have a major effect because you're still going to roll below an 18, 19, or 20 pretty often, right? Below, and you're going to roll like an 18 or below pretty often. So that's been very interesting. Anyway, so I've been kind of paying attention to all of this, and I don't think we've gotten to the point where like they're untouchable and now they're bored because none of the monsters are a threat. definitely means that I might have to increase the threat on the monsters. Now, the good news is increasing the threat on monsters is not hard to do because there are two really good dials that you can turn. One dial is ferocity. This is the number of times that a monster gets to act in a round. And the ferocity increase is also quadratic because a lot of times the things that they're doing are hitting multiple targets. So you really increase the threat of a monster by giving it even an additional one ferocity, i.e. like one more time per turn, one more time per round that it can act. And then the other big one is hit points, right? Increase hit points because a lot of characters are hitting more often. They're hitting for more damage. They're picking heroic abilities that increase the amount of damage that they do. So if you have 6 people, that quadratic gain needs to be offset by more hit points. And that could be, in some cases, like doubling their hit points. So I'm not afraid of increasing ferocity and increasing hit points, particularly when I have 6 players and now they're pretty beefy. And the characters are using evade a lot, so the threat output is a lot less. There's a lot of things going on there. But I feel like with Dragonbane, I have the ability to tweak these things pretty easily and keep the game fun and swingy and stressful and also increase the beats, high beats, low beats, all that kind of stuff. The other one is magic items. So I've been thinking about magic items for Dragonbane quite a bit. I wanted to offer some interesting magic items, and I have some ideas for magic items that I've started to drop into my game that are easy, nice, lazy tricks for coming up with fun Dragonbane magic items that aren't breaking the game and are easy. They fit the simplicity of the game without breaking the game and make it fun as well. The first one is there are a bunch of heroic abilities that are just lame, right? There are heroic abilities that if you read through it, it's like, oh, you can either get an extra attack or evade without it, or you can take less damage from falling. And it's like, how often does that come up, right? There's weird ones where there's heroic abilities that are very specific to specific circumstances that hardly ever come up. And almost very infrequently are players going to want to pick one of those heroic abilities over the really powerhouse abilities. And there's some really good powerhouse abilities. But instead, if you put that on a magic item, you have a magic amulet, or you have a magic ring, or you have a magic bracelet. And that magic bracelet gives you the ability, it gives you the equivalent of a heroic ability to take less damage when you fall. People are like, oh, that's cool, right? Like they don't feel like they lost something. They're not taking that over something else. They just got a new magic item that gives them a new ability. And even though it's a kind of a lame ability, if you were to select it, it's not lame if it's a thing you got on a magic item. So this is a really good opportunity to use those heroic abilities that are inside the core book that might otherwise get bypassed, but put them on magic items, and now they get these access to these things anyway that can give them some fun and some utility and make them feel like they got a good reward. What you don't want to do is do the good ones. So I would not put good heroic abilities on magic items, because that not only is going to give them a powerful item that they might not otherwise have, but it removes the fun of them selecting those high power abilities when it comes time for them to pick a heroic ability. If you give them cool heroic abilities on magic items, well, then they're like, well, that's lame. I guess I'll take this other lame one, right? Then it feels worse later. So I think that's an ability. That's the thing. The other thing I've been trying out is the idea of magic items that boost skills. And again, I would do them on less used skills. Don't put them on evade. Don't do them on longswords. Don't do them on like the stuff that they like to use that they're already boosting the skills up for. Look at the skills they're not really boosting and say, here are some magic items that can boost those skills. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how good a skill, like how good the bonus should be. I think it's 1 or 2. 2 is pretty meaningful, right? 2 is a 10% boost on a skill. And the way it works is when you put the item on, when you're wearing the item, your skill in that increases by that amount. However, your core version is still the same score. So if you're trying to boost that skill up, you're boosting the original score, not the score with the item attached. That way it's not pushing you out of the bounds where you're not going to be able to increase the score because you already pushed it too high. The other one is making sure it has a limit that says it cannot go above 18. So it has the same limit other ones have. Skills can never go up above 18, including when you're wearing one of these things. So that's kind of an interesting way to put smaller, those I would consider. You could have small trinkets that do 1, and then you could have like more powerful trinkets that do 2. So there's a lot of options there for coming up with fun magic items that could affect a lot of different skills that player. And I dropped a couple of them in my last game, and players are like, oh, that was really cool. Yeah, I like those. The other one, which is pretty obvious, is, and this is part of the core game, they just don't make it super easy to understand, is making magic items that have castings of spell use on them. I have a player whose character is starting to make those things on their own. They took all of the spells and have been seeking out the ones that help them make magic items. Sometimes they're one-use items where once you've expended them, they're done. Other times they can do it based on the will that you have, and sometimes they have their own will battery. So there's some magic items that are really powerful that might have a spell use on it that uses will from the item itself has will. The tricky bit I've been having with this one is you're supposed to either have training in a magical ability or the languages skill to be able to activate these items. And I found that to be a little too restrictive, but I don't like the idea that you could just do them whenever you want as well, without any chance for failure. So what I'm trying is that the item itself has a skill use attached to it, that you have a skill use with this item. It's almost like its own defined skill use. And that skill use, you roll against that skill use, right? And that way you can give items out where anybody can use it. So I gave a staff out that had an ability on it, like a psychic attack. And I was like, I wanted anybody to have the option to use this staff. I didn't want it to be just limited to those with languages or magic, because they already have a bunch of spells, right? I wanted other people to be able to use it. And that's what ended up happening, but you end up creating your own skill. Now, it could be interesting. You could have sort of a low skill and say it's a new skill, right? And you could track it on your character sheet and you get better at using the item the same way you would get better at another skill. Could be another way to handle that. So that's something I'm toying with as well. So lots of fun kind of homebrewy sort of ways of handling magic items. There's a new magic book available for Dragonbane. It was kickstarted. I just joined the late pledge for that. Apparently I didn't back it when it came out, so I joined the late pledge, and apparently that book, not apparently, I've seen it, that book has new spells specifically designed to help make magic items more interesting. So there's other options there for that as well. So I'm still really loving Dragonbane. I love the system. It's fast, it's fun, I'm enjoying the story. My players are happier with it, which I think is good, because maybe then I can get them into another campaign later. We could either run Paths of Glory, I think is one of them, Paths of Gold, something like that. And then there's the new Trudvang one, which kickstarting right now. When that comes out, I could probably get my group to say, oh yeah, we enjoyed that, we'll play that again. I have probably 2 groups that would be willing. Maybe all my groups would be willing to play Dragonbane. So, I love it. I really love Dragonbane. I'm very, very happy with it. There was a fun article that got sent around on the Sly Flourish Discord server, which I really liked, called Daggerheart, a dishonest review full of lies. Great title. And that title, that same tongue-in-cheek nature of the title is throughout the entire article. It's a really fun, really funny article talking about Daggerheart and a review of Daggerheart, saying it's a really good game. It's a kind of a really fun, interesting game. And also there's these like weird ways, what's its weird take on this whole fantasy RPG kind of system. So it is a really fun article, which I highly recommend you read, and it nailed a couple of the points that I've been thinking about when I've been running Daggerheart that have kind of not tripped me up exactly, but have definitely left me scratching my head. In the same way that I've been talking about Dragonbane from week to week, my Daggerheart game is every other week, but I think about it a lot. And I have brought up in the Discord, in our Sly Flourish Discord server, brought up many of my complaints. And some folks have said like, hey, you're just bashing Daggerheart at this point. And I'm like, if I was going to just bash it, I wouldn't talk about it at all. I'm talking about it because I really like it. And I want to understand this stuff. And I want to kind of figure out what it means, because lots of people are playing it, right? Lots of people are playing it. Lots of people are running it. Lots of people really love it. And my criticisms of it are not pointing at them saying they're wrong about Daggerheart. Mine is like, how do I figure out the balance between people really loving this game and these problems that I've been having when I've been running it, these kind of different bits that I'm having? And this article, I think, kind of captures a lot of that as well, of like, we can love a game and still poke at it. I poke at all the games. You just saw me poking about Dragonbane, right? I poked about Dragonbane. I poke about 5e. My favorite RPGs are RPGs where I poke at them, right? And I try to understand, like, well, what was the design going on here? And then what are the things that we need to do to be able to fix them? I have talked about some of my current takes on Daggerheart, and similar to what I said with Dragonbane, I reserve the right to change my mind, right? I reserve the right to go, like, oh, I was wrong. For example, I think it was last time or the time before, maybe it was last time, I mentioned that the way that monster actions occur, that you generally have monsters act when characters roll with fear. It turns out, no, you also have them act whenever the character fails an attack or fails a roll, right? If they if they do a duality roll and fail the check, whether they get hope or fear or not, that's also an opportunity for a GM move. And the GM move can, in fact, be activating a monster. So that means that it increases the amount of time monsters may activate between turns. And we were talking about in the chat, and it's somewhere between like 60 and 80% of the time, right? Depending on how hard the roll is. If the roll is like an even Steven roll, it's going to be about 80% of the time that they're either going to fail the check or roll with fear, or both. If the roll is more common among Daggerheart sort of rolls, which tends to favor the characters really heavily, it's going to be more like 60, 65%. But it's still pretty high. That's a lot of times when the monsters activate. So I talked about that, and I'm learning, right? I'm learning about this stuff. And for me to kind of poke at it and understand it helps me to learn it. And it also helps me say, okay, if there is a problem that I have, how can I address it so that I'm happy with it, right? Because I want to love this game. I want to continue to run this game, and so I need to kind of find the balance of where I'm happy with things. And it's there because I've been running it for a few sessions, and I like the system a lot. I'm really happy with a lot of it, and I think it's really interesting. But there are parts of it I am scratching my head. One of them, which I think I brought up before, and this is still my current feeling on Daggerheart, it is like the designers fell in love with every RPG and put them all in one, and they didn't decide which one it should be. Right? My complaint is like, it has everything going on in here. If you like Powered by the Apocalypse, it's in there. If you like 13th Age, it's in there. If you like Numenera, it's in there. If you like D&D 5e, it's in there. If you like 4th edition, it's in there. It's got all of it in there, right? And it's not like, well, which one did you really want it to be? And I feel like what ends up happening is it creates a mixed message of being rules light or rules heavy. And a lot of times when I complain about things, the response that I get is, well, I don't do it that way. You don't have to. It's much easier. Just worry about this part of it. I'm like, yeah, but it's got this stuff in there, right? It's not like they didn't have it in there. It's very easy for me to omit stuff, and I could just do that, right? But it's got this stuff in there. And I think like that example of rules light and rules heavy, here, an example I will give up is when you look up the GM moves section. The GM moves section says one of the questions that come up is how often should GMs be making a move? And I'm almost directly quoting it. It says GMs can do it whenever they want. So you can make a GM move whenever you want. But then there are elements, relentless. So relentless is the ability for a monster to be able to act again after it has been spotlit. If I'm a GM and I'm allowed to make moves whenever I want, according to the rules as written, I don't need relentless. I can just have monsters attack again. I can do whatever I want. It says it. So we have a mechanic called relentless, which kind of makes it feel like you shouldn't be doing that otherwise. Otherwise you would have it. But also an instruction in the book that's like, nah, do it whatever you feel. That's kind of the mixed message of being rules light and rules crunchy, right? That if I am given the capability to make moves whenever I feel like it, you don't also need to give me a monster ability that says you can do it twice per activation. Because now there's very clearly, and I believe this is the case, there's an expectation that you should not be making monster moves one right after the other if you're not either expending fear and particularly expending fear for a certain creature on the same creature, right? Like a creature should only be able to be spotlit once without the spotlight returning to the characters, right? And that's, I'm picking that one, but I don't think that that's like the small bit. I think this is a larger thing going on in Daggerheart, that it wants to be both 4th edition D&D and Powered by the Apocalypse at the same time, right? And I think that can be tricky. It's funny. So I had the conversation of like, we said, some folks said that in the Darrington Press Discord server, lots of new GMs are learning how to GM from Daggerheart. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's great, right? Because Daggerheart does have a heavy emphasis on both a crunchy game with a lot of mechanics and story-focused gaming that I appreciate and think is great. I would never recommend this as a GM's first game, though, because I think it is super crunchy. I'm been playing RPGs for a long time. I played lots and lots and lots of RPGs over decades. I find it pretty hard to run. And it's some of this stuff is part of the reason why, that I don't really know exactly what the message I'm supposed to be getting from the book is. It would not be my first. I would definitely tell people to play a Powered by the Apocalypse game, like Dungeon World or something like that first. And even that, I would be apprehensive saying should be your first RPG. But if you're going to go for the story-focused RPG, I think games like Dungeon World and Apocalypse World are easier to understand because they focus on one thing than a game that has Apocalypse World and Blades in the Dark and 13th Age and 4E and 5E and, all these other games. I wouldn't recommend it. And to make sure I wasn't crazy, because I don't know that a bunch of people said, well, you're wrong. This is definitely a great game for new GMs, but I wasn't sure. So I asked my wife, who's been playing in our game, and I said, would you recommend Daggerheart as a GM's first game? She's like, oh no. Right? So I'm like, okay. She recognizes it too. So, that's something I think about. And I don't know what is. I don't know what the answer to that is, right? Like, what game should a GM first learn? And I'm like, Shadowdark? Maybe. I mean, at least the mechanics of Shadowdark are really straightforward. The atmosphere, like Shadowdark absolutely knows what it wants to be, right? It absolutely tells you what kind of game it is. And so from that idea of like graduating from board games to role-playing games, I think Shadowdark really clarifies what it is. Where I feel like, somebody brought up Honey Heist, right? And you're like, Lasers and Feelings might be a good starting one. Like, at least the mechanics are straightforward, right? But at least it knows what it wants to be. And I feel like Daggerheart doesn't really know exactly what it wants to be, right? I feel like it wants to be a lot of different things instead of being like one thing. And the example are like, we love abstract distances, but not really because we want to have reach count. I've complained about this before, right? And I complained about this one because it's not an easy thing to fix. If you have 3 different abstract distances within 10 feet, you have to come up with some pretty careful stuff to figure out how to actually run that in theater of the mind because of reach. And I don't really have a good answer other than like, I'm only going to worry about the difference between melee and very close when a player cares about it. I'm going to put that on them to describe how melee and very close matter. Because it's, when I'm doing theater of the mind discussions, it's too nitpicky for me to talk about melee, very close, and close being 3 different distances that are all within 10 feet. Like it's literally has more resolution than squares. When it's easier to be like, hey, melee is like when you're right next to somebody, and close is when you're within 30 feet. Those are good distances, right? So it's like we like those abstract distances of 13th Age, but we don't really know exactly how to implement them. So we're going to make them really nitpicky. Same way, like we love 4E style monster rolls so much, they made 10 of them. 10 rolls, right? We love 4E style encounter building rules, sort of, but not really, because we like the idea of solo monsters, except solo monsters aren't really solo because according to our own encounter building guidelines, you could pack 3 solo monsters into one battle, but you should never put 3 solo monsters in one battle because they're solo, but they should also not be by themselves, which means they're not solo. So there's all this like, what is a solo monster, right? The action economy, like action economy is kind of all over the place, right? Like, because I don't even necessarily need monsters. I can have the environment kicking everyone's ass whenever the GM is making a move. I can like have, hey, the wall collapses. You fall on a stalagmite and it's really sharp and it cuts you up and here's how much damage it does. There's a lot of like ways to kind of work with the action economy, which is cool. One of the things that the article brought up that I thought was really funny and made sense was like, the way that rolling for damage works is that rolling for damage is like wanting, we like to roll for damage and rolling lots of dice is fun, but we don't want it to actually have any impact on the game. And the way we did that is damage thresholds, right? That you could roll giant fistfuls of dice all over the place. You're still only doing 1, 2, or 3 points of damage, no matter what you roll, right? You're going to do 1 point if it's really low. You're going to do 2 points if it's somewhere in the range, and you do 3 if it's above everything else. And some people said like, oh, there's also a massive damage rule, but that just increases the threshold by 1 more and does 4. But if you did 1,000,000 points of damage, if you rolled all the D20s on the planet, you're still only doing 4 damage to a monster, right? And that's because they really want to abstract damage from die rolling, but they still want to have die rolling. And you're like, Numenera, you just figure out how much damage you do based on the roll that you had, which is super fast. But we don't want to do that because we want people to roll dice. But it's really like, we're just rolling dice because we like rolling dice. Feels like some of it. And that's, again, getting to this, like, what does it want to be, right? I feel like thresholds was like a complicated way of saying we love rolling dice, but we don't want to actually have to worry about it. Is it complexity for complexity's sake? Have we made things complex, like damage rolling, just because we like the complexity? how, success rolls. There's so many different like variables that come into play when you're doing a success roll. There's so many of them that they say you should even have your own pile of tokens to remind you about how many +1s and -1s you have. Reminds me of Pathfinder, right? Pathfinder had like, here's 38 different ways to modify a D20 roll. It's really kind of funny. So I think everyone can find their preferred game in this system because it has them all in it. So I'm pretty sure once I get good and familiar with it, once and the whole reason I'm even having these complaints is because it helps me to understand, am I missing something? Because I got good feedback last week, right? The good feedback I got was, hey, you're wrong about how often monsters act, right? They can act this often. Okay, good. Am I wrong about this other stuff? Because maybe it turns out it's easier. Like, wow, there's a lot of stat blocks, right? There's environmental stat blocks and monster stat blocks. And since the encounters that you build almost always have 2 or 3 different monsters, that's 4 different stat blocks I got to review in a single fight. I'm lazy, man. I don't want that much. But I'm pretty sure I can come up with a Forge of Foes style thing. I'm pretty sure I can improv monsters. I can improv damage. I probably don't even need monster stats. I could just kind of react to the rolls that the players are doing and talk about what happens and then roll abstract amounts of damage against them. And I don't even need monsters, right? I'm pretty sure. So I think we can all kind of find the game that we want in here. And it'll be really interesting. A little joke that I make about Daggerheart right now is, man, I cannot wait for Daggerheart 2, right? I think it'll be really interesting once people have really played and refined this game for a while and come up with lots of tips and tricks and come up with lots of house rules and come up with lots of ways to love it. And maybe they'll come out with a new version of it that's like, yeah, it turns out this is the kind of game it's intended to be. Like, this is what we wanted it to be, right? I think that'll be really interesting. I really wonder with Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, like Jeremy Crawford in particular, but both of them have been involved in D&D for decades. It's got to be really fascinating to see how they feel about it, right? It's a game that was already designed when they came in. What are they doing with it? Right. And that I think could be really interesting. It would be really fun to have like an hour-long conversation with Jeremy Crawford about this kind of stuff. Like, what does it mean and how does it work? And what are ways we can work with it? And how do you narrate narrative combat when you have so many different distance bands that they're more specific than squares are? Like, I'm very curious about that. So I know this sounds like I'm just bashing the game, and I'm not, because I really like it, right? I want to be in love with it, because I love the production value of it. I love how excited people are for it. I love story-focused games. I love that it's crunchy enough that players really have a lot of meat on the character side. I love that there's a lot of flexibility on the GM side to really evolve the story. I love all of that stuff. And I'm just noodling through the details to try to understand how to make it the game I want it to be, because we can always do that, right? Like, the nice thing about RPGs is once I own it, and I can do whatever I want with it. And I'm going to do these things. So I wanted to share more of my thoughts on that, but more in particular, I thought, take a look at that article because it's a really, really fun article. That's the Daggerheart, a Dishonest review full of lies. Discord. Over the past couple of weeks now, there have been some kind of big events that have gone on with Discord. And it brought a lot of attention to Discord and to what people were referring to as the enshittification of Discord. Discord is absolutely on the path of enshittification. Many centralized services are on the path of enshittification. Some of them are at stage 1, which means they're being really good to people. But some of them are starting not to. Now, if you're familiar with Cory Doctorow's definitions of enshittification, enshittification is how platforms decay, right? How centralized services, online services that we love, start good and then begin to suck. We're all very familiar with many systems that have gone through this thing. To be very describe it very quickly, first, they're good to customers. They offer a really, really good service for probably free or very, very little money. But people love. I said players, but people really love them. Then they start to get business partners. They start to bring business partners in. Sometimes it's advertisers. Sometimes it's other kind of people to sell you stuff. Sometimes it's other groups in there, and they start to cater to the business partners. Then they start to cater mostly to their shareholders. How do we get profit back for the people that own the thing, whether it's shareholders or whether it's the company themselves? How do we extract value from all of this? Which generally takes that value from the people who use the tool and the partners that they have. How do they extract value from this? And then it just sucks for everybody. The platform just, at the end, the system just sucks, right? That's the stages of enshittification. We are all very familiar with some of the stage 4 systems. Facebook is a stage 4 system. Amazon, stage 4 system. Amazon's only thing is it's still pretty good to customers, but it sucks for everyone else. Right. And it really sucks for customers too. They're not getting the best product for the money that they're paying. They're usually either overpaying or they're getting lower quality products, often lower quality products. So it's bad for everybody. We have lots of platforms that are on this stage. And so Discord has been one where we've been worried about it because Discord's been very good. Like I use it every day, probably hours a day. I'm on Discord. Love it, right? However, then they're starting to go for an IPO. They want to be a public company. And so they started bringing like, hey, we've got these like new things, like, hey, the little integration with games. Hey, wouldn't you like these? I forget what they call them. Hey, wouldn't you want to buy these little diamond token things that can help you get better emojis and stuff like that? They're trying to figure out how to extract value from their free customers. Now, is it wrong? I don't know. Like it's an expensive service, right? People really love it. It costs them a lot of money to operate it. But it's not, the problem is that if they just charged us for it, they'd either have to charge us a whole lot or they're not going to make a lot of money. So they have to find other ways. And usually it's that integration with business partners, advertisements, and other things. So recently, there's been a big uproar because they said, hey, because we operate globally, we have to follow particular laws of some states in the United States and some countries in the EU and other places. We need to be able to verify adults for adult services. And it blew up because it was like, hey, we need your driver's license or we need you to take a picture of yourself. And they were like, we're never going to keep any of this local stuff. Oh, by the way, we had a leak of this data 6 months ago because they already did this for certain countries in the EU and immediately the data got leaked, right? Immediately. And that's pretty awful, right? It was like right about. So then they're like 6 months later, like, yeah, we're going to probably expand this out. Oh, but we're working with a different group now. And you're like, really? You've already broken my trust and you're going to do it again. So that's a very legitimate concern. What I don't think is a legitimate concern is that this isn't enshittification. This is bad law, right? That like these new law and lots of countries and lots of other groups have had these new laws that they put in place to protect the children. And in protecting the children, what they mean is we want to take all of your private data and, put it on commercial systems that are then going to leak it all over the place or sell it, right? Who knows what? So this is a situation of, in my opinion, bad law. Now, you mixing bad law with centralized services and companies who don't want to put a lot of money into it or feel like, hey, this is a great way for us to sell your data to other people. So you're mixing two bad things. But I wouldn't be 100% blaming Discord in this situation. Now, it is true that one of the things, apparently one of the companies they were looking at to hold this data is a company that was backed by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, by the way, happy to sell your private information to anybody in the planet, and also use it in order to, kill and hurt people. So, I can certainly understand why you don't want that, why you don't want that connection there. There was this weird naming convention where apparently people thought that the system that they were going to use, which was called Onyx, was also the name of a system that they used for some kind of mass surveillance thing. Turns out it was just a naming convention. The Onyx that they were using for one thing and was named after a Pokemon card. The other Onyx was named after something else completely. But it was true that they were looking at this different company. So now Discord has backed away and said, oh, we're not going to really do anything with this. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. By the way, very few people are going to do it. And I don't know. So far, they have not asked me for an adult one. So what do we do about it? What are we going to do? What's the answer? Nothing. We're screwed. I'm not joking, right? The answer is we're too late. I personally it's too late. I'm already fully embedded with Discord. This is the problem with Facebook, right? I have friends and family who hate Facebook and are still on it. And they're on it because their friends are on it. And they're on because the groups that they support are on it. And Elizabeth, Patrick Paladin, who's on our Discord server and runs an awesome website and writes awesome articles, she sent me a really good article about this. That's title is Communities Are Not Fungible. And I'm going to link to this in the show notes because I think it's really important. And the point was like, sure, you can get all nerdy and say, oh, we could move to Rocket Chat, or we could move to Matrix, or we could all move to Stoat. Moving the platform is not the issue. It's that people are not going to follow you there, or some will, but some won't. And what you end up doing is creating another community. You're not moving a community. You're losing one and creating another. And I just cannot see a situation where I'm going to walk away from the Sly Flourish Discord server. I just don't know how that's going to happen. We have thousands of people there that have signed up. We have hundreds of people who are there regularly. They're not all going to want to move to whatever new magical system I have, right? Some will, some won't. And what we end up doing is creating another system for it. The answer is it's not a technology issue. It's a cultural issue, and people are just familiar. And even then, let's pretend I set up a Stoat server, and we all move to this new Stoat server, and we set it up, and everybody's happy with it. And you get some people, we would be really lucky to get 10% of the people to move over. Really lucky. So what do we do? Delete the old one with the 90% that are still there having chats? Do we hand it to somebody else? What do we do with that? And what about the other 30 Discord servers I'm connected to? What about my friends who use the Discord server for their D&D games? I'm still not leaving, right? I'm still stuck there. So this is where enshittification, and this is where our understanding of enshittification is really important, because this is an example of where we're already stuck. In my opinion, I'm stuck. Maybe you're ready to go, right? You're ready to flee. But the reality is, man, a lot of us are stuck. A lot of us are stuck here. And the best time to not get stuck is before you ever start using one. So really think about the new systems and services you sign up for and ask yourself, do I have a way to extract myself from this? Can I move to a different server? If they change their policies, can I leave? Can I somehow keep my community and move it from place to place? And the answer a lot of times is no, right? So that's really the thing that comes to me when I think about Discord is we're hosed, right? Discord, I'm feel it. I'm hosed, right? I'm a nerdy guy. I try all kinds of things. I set up things. I got my Raspberry Pi with my 321 backup on it. And I think we're stuck, right? And I think it who knows, when the ads start flowing in and when all our stuff gets sold and when every word we're putting in there is sold to an AI company to train a model, we're still stuck, right? And I bet you 90% of the people will still stay there. Because we've seen it, right? We've seen these other platforms do terrible things. We've seen their CEOs turn into complete inhuman monsters. And people still stay on those platforms forever, right? They just don't leave. And it's a really sad situation, but it's really the case. And the best of advice I have to you is don't do it again. When you're looking at other services that you're going to join, ask yourself, find the ones that you know you can extract yourself from. If they're centralized services are very delicate. Right? They're very brittle and it's very easy to get you sucked in. So are you looking at self-hosted services? Are you looking at distributed services, federated services? Are you looking at services that you know you can move away from? You can leave them completely and go somewhere else. You can, talk to your nerdy friend about self-hosting a version of it. Do you have things like that? If you don't, then, maybe getting caught up in stuff. So that to me is really the lesson. The lesson that I see is, don't get caught in the next one. And sorry that we're screwed with Discord. Moving steps forward. I came to a realization after I had written Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. The original, in Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, I had made the statement that every time you are putting your prep notes together, it is worth writing out 10 new secrets. That you should throw away your old secrets and you should come up with 10 new ones. And what I discovered in my own behavior and in talking with lots of people about it is that it's totally acceptable to look at the secrets that you had from one week, decide which secrets are still relevant and move those secrets forward, and then write any new secrets up that are relevant to the new game that you're running. And that saves a ton of time, right? That the secrets and clues are probably the beefiest part of the 8 steps of Lazy Game Master prep that you can find in Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. And secret, since they're the hardest one, anything that you can do to kind of speed that up, speeds up prep overall, and I don't think hurts the game at all. So I have changed my mind. I've written articles about moving steps forward, or moving secrets forward. And now I'm kind of expanding that out to say, what are the other steps? When we look at the 8 steps, what are the other steps that we can move forward? What are the steps that make sense that we should evaluate fresh every time we're running the game? And what steps can we move forward from one session to the next? So looking through the 8 steps, if you think about the 8 steps, we have review the characters as step 1. And I think reviewing the characters every session still is valuable. I think it could be useful to go back at your previous session and say, hey, what were the things that I noted about the characters when I was doing the last session? But you probably want to think about your characters again this session and really think about the context of the session that you're running, the characters who are going to be there, and what kind of things you want to review for them. I still think that there's not much you can shift forward when reviewing the characters. And this is now, will I change my mind again in a year and say, oh, you can? Maybe. I don't think so, because I've been doing this now a long time, hundreds and hundreds of games that I've prepped, and I still review the characters every time, and I still think it's worth reviewing those characters every time. The strong start is also another one. It's very unlikely that you can move a strong start from one session to the next. If you used your strong start, it's used, and you're not going to come up with a new one. So a strong start is almost certainly something that you want to come up with for each session of the game that you are preparing. Scenes are one of those areas where you might be able to move some of your scenes forward. It really depends on which scenes you ran and which scenes you might not have gotten to. A lot of times I write out scenes that I'm expecting or that I want to have on hand. Like, these are very short scene descriptions, right? Like one sentence or a few words scene descriptions. But I don't end up moving those. We don't end up doing them. So those I can actually move forward. Some of the scenes I can look at and say, oh yeah, those scenes are still relevant. One thing that I pack into the scenes area of the 8 steps are future quest ideas. And sometimes those future quest ideas, they don't select them yet. And if they don't select them, I will move those forward from session to session so that when I can put them in front of the players and they can pick one of them. And once they pick one, then I know where to go for the next session that we're going to run. So those sometimes, if I haven't gotten the answer yet about which path they want to take of multiple paths, I will bring those quests from my scene step from one prep set of prep notes to my scene step in the next set of prep notes. So I would say probably you might be able to get a third of your scenes, depending on how many scenes you prep. I bet you about a third of them you could move from one session to the next, depending on how far they got. It's still worth kind of reviewing them all and making sure they're all still relevant, making sure the path they're on is still going to lead to the scenes that you have. So of course you're going to still want to customize them around the session that you've got and that you've got coming up, but it can still help you. Secrets and clues I've talked about, right? Secrets and clues, you can certainly read through your last session's secrets and clues. What I have been recently doing is I copy and paste the whole set of secrets and clues from my old notes to my new notes, and then I go through them all and say, yeah, those are dead, that's dead, that's dead, that's dead. I delete the ones that have either already exposed or that are no longer relevant, and then the ones that are still relevant remain, and it's usually 3 to 5. And then I added new secrets that are based on new stuff, new context, and new things that are going on in the session. Locations. Many times, if you have not used a location, but the characters are still headed there, you can move those locations forward. If you are running a large dungeon crawl, for example, you might only go through 4 or 5 rooms of the 10 rooms that you might have written out little descriptions for. So you can certainly keep the other ones going. Like the other steps, it's worth editing this section every time you're doing your prep to focus it on the locations the characters are likely to go to. You don't need to keep the old locations in there if they're not going back to those old locations. So any notes that are no longer relevant, you can throw away. Anything that you think still could be in their path, you can keep. And depending on what kind of adventure you're running, what kind of session you're running, what adventure type you're running, that's where you might decide which of those pieces of those prep do you want to move forward. Same thing with NPCs. Sometimes you have NPCs that are still relevant to the session that's going to come up. You have those NPC descriptions. NPCs are one of those where I think it's even worth having a list of NPCs external from your normal prep notes. So you have an NPCs list for your campaign, and that helps you keep those names there so that when characters pop up later on in the adventure, you can go back to those notes and take a look at them. Unlike secrets, I think it's worth keeping a list of the NPCs for your campaign, and it's worth editing that list from time to time, saying, oh, those guys are all dead. We don't need those guys anymore. I think that can be worthwhile. Monsters, similar to the other ones as well. Monsters, if you have not yet run them, you can keep them in your notes if you think that they are still relevant. It's probably less likely that your monsters are going to carry over from session to session, but they might. And if they do, then this is your opportunity to keep them over. Of course, we don't keep a lot of notes in our monster section. It's usually the name of a monster and a page number. That's all I usually keep in my session notes. Is like, hey, there's a Hezro and it's on page 86, right? That's the only thing that I really keep in my notes when I'm looking at monsters anyway. Treasure as well. Sometimes you set up a treasure parcel and the characters don't pick up the treasure parcel, and there's no reason to recreate it. You can, if you've done some editing on that to make sure the treasure parcel is what you expect you would want to give them, you can move it from session to session. The one thing I have had trouble with, though, and I would recommend taking a look at, is make sure that you mark off which treasure they took already, so you don't give them 2 headbands of intellect because you forgot that they took a headband of intellect last time you played. So that's a common problem that I have, is I will forget what treasure I gave out and I'll move the treasure parcel forward, and then it turns out I gave the same thing already. I'm kind of bad about keeping track of what magic items I've already given out, and you don't want to give out the same magic item again. It looks really amateur, right? If you're like, oh, and there's a headband of intellect, and like, didn't we get one of those? Like, oh yeah, that was from the wrong notes, right? You don't want to do something like that. So it's worth reviewing the treasure, but if you know what treasure you gave out, what treasure you didn't, you can certainly take the treasure you didn't give out and move it from the next session. So really the whole point of doing all this is that there is a good opportunity to save time and save energy with your prep. If you found that you prepped a lot of stuff it's worth going through all of your notes to ask yourself, hey, what of the prep notes from last time can I preserve and keep and move forward to my next prep? And what are some of the elements that I really ought to redo for each session that I'm doing? Hopefully walking through these 8 steps and kind of talking that through gave you ideas about what sort of steps you can move forward, what kind of steps you think you have to review each time so that you're focusing your energy on the material that's really going to help you run great games. Every quarter on the Sly Flourish Patreon, we have the Sly Flourish Patreon Q&A. Every month, patrons of Sly Flourish can ask questions related to tabletop role-playing games. Every week, I answer all of the questions that I received over the past week, and some of those questions I bring here to the show so that we can dive in a little deeper. Justin Yu says, maybe this has been answered before, but I couldn't find it in the talk show topics and Patreon questions. Why play 5e? What about 5e makes you want to play 5e? Matt Colville had a video about this topic 3 years ago called What Are Dungeons For? I'm finishing up a campaign and looking to start a new one. After the OGL and backing, reading, and playing many new RPGs, these questions are becoming more and more prevalent to my mind. These, if it's dungeon crawling, resource management, and exploration, I'd suggest playing Shadowdark or Torchbearer 2e. Dragonbane or many OSR style systems. If it's challenging combat tactical play Draw Steel, Lancer, D&D 4e, or Pathfinder 2. If it's creating a narrative with your friends with mechanics that aspire, maybe try Forge in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse games or Fate, like Daggerheart, Blades in the Dark, or 13th Age. I personally don't think D&D 5e or its variants are great at any of these. It's many DMGs I feel like encourage how to go about making it an interesting combat game or a dungeon crawler. So there's 2 things. I will answer the surface question, but then there's also the underlying question, which is clearly you don't understand why other people play 5e. And I think there is a common misconception that people are only playing 5e because it is the popular game, and it's actually not nearly as good as you think. And that one I disagree with, because I think 5e really is an excellent system. Right, I feel it is, of the variants of D&D that I have played over my life, which is 4 or 5 different versions of D&D. I definitely like 5th edition the best, and I think it captures both what makes D&D D&D and also brings the modern improvements to D&D that have happened since 3rd edition, but puts them into a place that makes it play well. Does it have problems? Absolutely. But none of those problems that I find to be fundamentally bad, right? None of those that I feel fundamentally hurt the game to the point where it was unplayable. I have been playing hundreds and hundreds of 5e games, and I still love it. And I would still play it again, right? I'm looking at my future campaigns and what I'm playing, and I have lots of different RPGs that I want to play. However, 5e is still on that list, right? That I still really like 5e. I'm running a 5e game in 40 minutes from now, and I'm still looking forward to it. So there's lots of reasons to play 5e. The surface level, what makes you want to play 5e? So there are a few things. Now, one of them definitely is, well, players understand it, right? We have lots of people who've been playing 5e for a long time, and so it's pretty easy to pick it up and play. Like switching from D&D 2014 to D&D 2024, not a big leap. D&D 2014 to Tales in the Valiant, not a big leap. But also not a big leap to go to games like Shadowdark. Now, you say, like, there's games, if you want to play a game that has dungeon crawling and stuff like that, play Shadowdark. If you want a game that's more old school style, you can play an OSR game. If you want more combat tactical play 4e, Pathfinder 2. So all of those games have specializations in them. But one of the things that 5e does particularly well is you have lots of different ways that you can play that game. There's only a couple of ways that I would say 5e doesn't really work well as a fantasy RPG. And I would say, and they're more resource management, old school style play, I don't think 5e fits very well. The minute you get things like Goodberry, the minute you have things like the light cantrip, it completely changes the style of game. And that just the light cantrip alone, like think about Shadowdark, right? If Shadowdark had the light cantrip, it wouldn't be called Shadowdark, right? The whole game would fall apart. So there are styles of games that 5e cannot capture, but it can capture a lot, right? It can do some resource-focused games. I mean, Out of the Abyss. I ran the Out of the Abyss campaign where the characters had like one broken kobold short sword for like 5 sessions, right? You can do a more resource-focused game where you don't have good access to food or lighting or weaponry and stuff like that. But then eventually, once you get to a level where you start to have that stuff, then you do, right? And so I think as a high fantasy RPG, 5e captures a whole lot. And that's why I really like it, right? I also like it because there are many versions of it, right? I have different companies I can go to for different versions. I have tons of different books that I can grab and drop in and drop out. There's tons of house rules for it, many of which that I've written that I use myself. The Forge of Foes stats for monsters, abstract distances, which I've written about, better encounter building guidelines that you can find in like the Tales of Valiant Game Masters guide, which I wrote. Lots of different ways to approach 5e. And because I really think that like 5e as a role-playing game platform is really good and has so many different ways you can play it, including ways from companies like MCDM, who made books like Flee Mortals that capture some of the tactical nature of 4e that they wanted to have in 5e, and it captures it pretty well. That doesn't mean those other games aren't also really good. Many of the games you mentioned are games I want to play. 13th Age, I love 13th Age. I want to play Shadow the Weird Wizard. I want to play Dolmenwood. I want to play the new Shadow Dark with the new Cursed Scroll books, right? I'm really enjoying my Dragonbane game. I'm really enjoying my Daggerheart game, even though I complain about it a lot. So there's lots of reasons to play it. So I think that what I would say is you shouldn't look at it, and I don't know if you are or not, but you shouldn't look at it like everybody's just a big dope, and that's the only reason they like 5e. Or the only reason people like 5e is because it has the D&D brand on it. That is not true, right? It is absolutely not true, because there are lots of people playing Tales of Valiant, which does not have the D&D brand on it. And it could be, maybe, that people are playing it because they really like it, right? And they do. Lots of people do. Lots of people have. 10 years this game went on, right? Like, it was 10 years before they even put out a slight revision, and even the revision is still basically the same game. So we're now in year 11. Year 12? I think we're in year 12 now, right? We're in year 12 of 5e, and it is still really popular and still really well played, and I still really like it a lot. So hope that answers your question. Unfirth says, do you have any best known methods for conducting character creation during a session 0 via Discord? Back in the first edition days, we just rolled up what we wanted and brought them to the table. Much more recently, I've had new to RPG players and pre-gens work perfectly. But now I'm starting a Traveler campaign where players may or may not be experienced with the rules and thus need a lot of coaching, which is hard to do online. The best idea I've come up with this is to have pre-gens available so they could grab and then watch and learn from the more experienced players as they create theirs. What are your suggestions to get it done efficiently and build connections between the characters? So there's two angles to this. One is the fact that you're doing it online, and one that you're doing it during a session 0. I definitely recommend that when you build characters, I think building characters together is great. Also, Traveler has a really fun system for building characters. I've only done it once. My friend James ran a Traveler game, and we played it. And I remember that like the process of going through character creation was really fun. And I wouldn't want to, and we did it online. Now that I think about it, we played online. We played our Traveler game online. And I don't remember online getting in the way at all, right? I remember it was like a session that we spent just on character creation. But character creation for Traveler is really about building up story. So, in building the story of the character. The Traveler is the game that everyone laughs at because you can literally die during character creation, right? Which is hysterical. But it can, and it's because your whole character arc takes place during your character creation aspect. So I think more so than just grabbing a pre-gen and going, because I don't know, I mean, I'm not a super experienced with Traveler. I've only played a handful of times. But I feel like that the act of character creation is really one of the fun aspects of the game, and I would be nervous about just jumping into pre-gens and trying to go into the game. You could run a one-shot just to get familiar with the mechanics and stuff like that, and then we're going to build characters, aside from that's not a terrible way to go. And online, I would just be patient with everybody, right? I would have people kind of, talk to them online, play with video, play with audio, use the chat, show stuff, like show pictures, take screenshots and paste it in so people can see what's going on, and be patient with folks online so that everybody has it. But I've now run session 0s multiple times over online play where we've built characters, and I thought that it worked out really well. The key is just be patient and talk to your players about being patient about the fact that you're going to spend a session wanting to talk about the game. Because sometimes if they're like action focused players, they're going to be like, man, I can't believe we're going to spend an entire session on character creation. So you want to make sure you got the right players and that their heads are in the right place to be able to want to spend that amount of time. Alex W. says, I think you answered something like this before in general terms, but could you speak on how to build deadly or challenging combat encounters when the party has pets, companions, or sidekicks? I have tried the sidekick feature in Tasha's Monstrous Menagerie 2 and played with some of the stuff in previews in Ian World Publishing, and upcoming pets and sidekicks, but it still seems like the party and the amazing friends steamroll the monsters anytime they have a boost from the semi-PCs or even NPCs who join. I have tried playing around with your CR level benchmark and Forge of Foes to sort of reverse engineer a working method, but the math is not my strong suit and it never seems to help. For example, per the lazy benchmark, a CR1 creature would be equivalent to a level 4 or 5 PC. 5 creatures would be equivalent to level 10 PC, etc. Any tips are greatly appreciated. Yeah, it's tough. Tip number 1, don't have a lot of sidekicks. Right? This is my hey, Uncle Mike is going to give you hard rules for life, right? I think Uncle Mike's going to be a new feature on the show. Before I was talking about making sure to eat fiber to stay regular, but we're also going to have some other hard lessons from Uncle Mike. So one of my Uncle Mike's hard lessons is have fewer players, right? Four players is easier than 6 or 7 players. So fewer players is easier to run than lots of players. Low level is easier than high level, right? These are some common things that aren't really great advice because sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't work for my groups where I have 6 people in my games, and I love having 6 people in my games, right? So it works. So one of them is try not to have a lot of sidekicks, right? If you can, ask your players to say, hey, I'll make you a deal. You can have your sidekick, and it makes sense that you have your sidekick, and your sidekick can be around during the story parts, and we'll have some things, but keep them out of combat. If you keep them out of combat, I keep them out of combat. Otherwise, I'm going to fireball your pet deer, right? So if you have opportunities to keep the sidekicks out, all the better. But if you don't, so what do you do? And here's a big problem. Challenge is not the issue. Time is the issue. Time is the issue for a lot of this stuff. How much time is it going to take, right? And the more actors you have on the stage, the more time it's going to take. Whether they're NPCs or whether they're monsters or whether they're characters, it's going to take more time. Can you increase the challenge? Absolutely. Just add more monsters. Very simple, right? But what happens when you add more monsters? Things take longer. So the first answer is have fewer of those, have fewer pets and sidekicks. Another one is talk to the players about maybe not incorporating the pets and sidekicks into the game. We joke at one of my games because the son of one of the players loves casting the old D&D 2014 Summon Woodland Beings, and one of the other players who DM said, I banned him from playing that class. He's not allowed to play that class because he'll just summon 9 guys, and then we'll all spend time watching him move his 9 wolves around every turn. And that's why did you make a spell that lets you have 9 creatures, right? Don't do that. Why? So the answer is, how about you do that off screen, or you come up with ways to abstract it. Maybe you say hey, the creature that you have can give you advantage on your first attack with an aid action every time, but don't have them spend a lot of time. But you're talking about challenge specifically, so I'll answer challenge specifically. And the answer is more monsters. The other answer is, it's up to you to recognize the kind of added power that the characters have, and then increase. If you're looking for a lazy encounter benchmark, you basically have to say, do I treat them like there's another additional character or not? Right? So the way that you're calculating the lazy encounter benchmark is of two variables. What level are the characters and how many are there? And then you multiply that, right? And then you divide it by some number. That tells you how many monster CRs you get. Either by 2 if they're 5th level or above, or by 4 if they're 1st to 4th level. So you treat them, instead of if you have 5, let's say you have 5 characters, but they have a bunch of pets and stuff like that. You can decide, are the bunch of pets affecting things enough that it's the equivalent of having 6 characters or 7 characters? And if so, then you use the math that way and say, okay, instead of, I know there's only 5 characters plus a handful of pets, but I'm going to treat them as 7 characters. It doesn't change the math very much. It makes the math, the math equation is the same, only you're treating them as though the group is bigger. Same levels, right? You just use the character levels. Don't worry about how powerful the pets are, right? You only worry about how powerful the pets are in your loose estimation of, does it count as another character or not, right? A lot of times they're not going to count as an entire additional character, but 2 might, right? Or 3 pets might count as 2 characters or something like that. You have to decide how much to increase it. But if you're looking at increasing the threat, the easiest way to increase that is just treat them as though there are more characters, right? And the nice thing about that is it still accounts for the big jumps that happen between 4th and 5th level, and 10th and 11th level, and 16th and 17th level. So hopefully that helps you out, right? If not, drop in the Patreon Discord and we can talk more about it. Friends, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did and you want more stuff like this, the best way to do so is to subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. It is absolutely free to sign up. You get a free newsletter for signing up, and you get a free adventure generator for signing up. So every week you get a newsletter that has links to all of the other work that I do. You can also become a patron of Sly Flourish and support me directly and support the work that we do. You can get awesome tips, tricks, adventures, scenarios, tools, things to help you run your games. You get access to the Patreon Q&A. You get access to our awesome Discord community, and you help me put on shows like this. And you can pick up any of my books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, Lazy DM's Workbook, Forge of Foes, City of Arches, and more at the Sly Flourish bookstore. Links for all of that are in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.